Basically, we will have resources, and resources will have something called as action, and action will tell you what is the desired state. Okay. And now, based out of our necessity, we would find a resource, and we would be looking into different options and what are the values which we can fill into it. That's the equation, right, from yesterday. Yeah. But okay, if you come down, there are some common functionalities. Okay, when I say common functionalities, they apply to every resource. Okay, so action is mostly common in all of the resources, and there will be an action item which is called as nothing. So when you write it, nothing happens. So for example, if you have written package HTTPD action nothing, it is as good as not writing like that line. Okay, so this, what is the need for this? If you have written it, what is the need for this? Okay, possibly going down the line, you want to do this or you want to skip that step. Okay, in that cases, if you don't want to change your code, you can change the action item. అంటే ఇంతకు ముందు స్టెప్ లో 3 ఉండేవి, ఇప్పుడు 2 జరిగితే సరిపోతుంది. సో 1 స్టెప్ కి put action as nothing, so that it is as good as skipping that step. Okay, and then you would have different properties. Okay, and generally what happens is, whenever chef basically fails, it fails on the first attempt itself. Okay, if that is not your case, and if you want, whenever it fails, you want to retry the action again, then you can change that retries count. Generally not done in administration, never done in production. Okay, it has failed, it's okay, it has failed, we'll find out the reason. Okay, but there might be some cases whenever you are downloading the content and all of that, the service might not be available. Okay, in that cases you might need delay, or probably you might want to try many times. In that case, you would be looking into that retries and retry delay. Okay, so and then case sensitivity. Okay, basically sensitive is not case sensitivity, it is basically with respect to the data what it has to log. Okay, so for example, when you create usernames and all of that, it would not log the sensitive information over there. But if that is not the case for you and you want to log even sensitive information, then you have to make it as true. But it is not good as per any security standard to log user details. ఇది మనం ఎప్పుడు మార్చం. Okay, no matter whether you are working it on knowingly or unknowingly, it doesn't make sense to basically enable logging, so that you would get from the logs, you would be able to make out who your user is and what are his actions. So it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so don't worry about these activities, but the whole point which I'm trying to tell is, irrespective of the resources, there are certain things which you can do common, and every resource will have their own custom parameters. Okay, we would be setting those parameters with different values. Okay, and what are those possible values of it? Sometimes your action might tell, and sometimes chef itself might decide. For example, I'm using package on Red Hat, which means yum, right? I'm using package on Ubuntu, which means apt-get. So basically, when I'm doing this, okay, if I write package and if I give the name of the package which is not known to yum, that is my mistake, right? Make sense, right? So valid values of package differ from operating system to operating system. For example, you cannot write package Apache 2 on a Red Hat machine. Package Apache 2 makes sense because apt-get Apache 2 is present on Debian based out of machine. So the valid set of values are defined by the action or the resource which you are taking, and sometimes chef also defines it. For example, in service, generally you would not have action called as installed. You would have started, stopped, restarted. So those are the kind of things which chef comes up with. Okay, so actions values and parameters values are not same for every resource, because based out of your resource they might change the whole perspective. Since it is package, we are speaking about installation. If it is file, we might speak about creation. Okay, if it is service, we might be basically interested in changing the state of it. So from resource to resource, values change, but there are certain common values which are basically done by this. Okay, and now we have taken the package resource, right? Okay, package resource basically knows that if it is Red Hat, it has to run yum. If it is Ubuntu, it has to run apt-get. Similarly, if it is open source, it would take whatever makes sense. Okay, so that is basically defined by something called as provider. You are seeing a provider over there, right? So there are some default providers defined based out of your different parameters. For example, the nodes operating system comes into play. But there are also installations which are basically done in programming languages. For example, there is in Python, there is something called as pip. It is a package manager for Python. And you want Chef to manage Python packages. So in that case, your provider might be pip. Okay. And now you go to the Node.js, and then we have something called as Node Package Manager. So package is essentially not about operating systems, but you can change the purpose of it. For that, you need to know the right provider which Chef has defined. And we have to just refer to the documentation, know what is the provider name for pip, and put it over there. Okay. So essentially, reading of the documentation is mandatory, no matter whatever you're trying to do. Once you know the steps, it doesn't make sense. Just don't go like what I am doing right now. I am doing right now like this because I have read this all many times. And you would be able to write Chef comfortably if you go through this documentation again and again. Because from version to version, there are certain parameters which are stopped, certain parameters which are newly given, which gives you enhanced functionality. So it always makes sense to be followed with this documentation. Okay. So there are many other things. For example, this was the provider which I was speaking about. If you see, don't worry about that when and all of that, but we can make out, right, what is trying to tell. Okay, when it is Debian, he wants a provider which is called as DPKJ package, and when it is Fedora, he wants something called as RPM package. He has not taken yum or he has not taken the default stuffs. Okay, do you remember us installing Chef client or Chef DK? How did we install Chef DK on Red Hat machines? We have downloaded the RPM and then we have executed RPM minus IVH. Okay, it is not yum install, right? So if you want to do similar kind of installation, then probably you might need to write something which looks like this. Okay, so you can change providers. Okay, but this is very corner scenarios. We don't do it regularly, but you can do it. That's the whole point which I'm trying to make. Okay, this is where I'm trying to tell that Chef is more. It gives you more control. These kind of things, it is not possible in Ansible. You have to search for altogether a new thing. There is one important activity called as ignore failure. Okay, generally what happens is whenever some resource fails, okay, it will not execute the other whatever you have written after that. For example, we have written yesterday package httpd action install, and let us assume that we are trying to do it on a machine where there is no internet. So whenever it tries to do yum install httpd, what happens? It tries to download from the internet, but unfortunately that machine doesn't have an internet and it fails. Okay, and after that we have written a step called as service httpd started or something like that. Okay, that will not execute because the first step itself have failed. But if you want to slightly change the behavior and say that, okay, even when something goes wrong, I want to continue my execution, then you can write that ignore. Okay, but these are very, very corner scenarios. These you don't do it daily. Okay, we like if it fails at the first thing, let us fail it there itself, because in administration it is not generally, you will not have steps where if step A is failed, still you can install step B. That is very rarely, but we do it the things mostly in the sequential manner while installing any infrastructure. So these are the corner scenarios. That's the whole point which I'm trying to tell. But these are all common functionalities. These you can implement. For example, I can add ignore failure to any Chef resource. Okay, I can add action nothing to any Chef resource. These are the common things. Okay, and now let us try to get to the specific things. I have said that package is used for what? Installing. Okay, so let us go to the package which we have done yesterday. Okay, so I'm going to the package. Okay, come on. Yeah, fine. So package is basically used to manage packages. Okay, and if you want specific, you can use all of these packages. Okay, you are seeing Windows _ package, right? Okay, this uses Chocolatey. For this to work, your Windows server should have Chocolatey. Okay, but very soon that would be replaced with PowerShell DSC. Till that moment we have to wait, but that's the whole point. If you see, there are programmatical related packages also. For example, you are seeing something called as where is brew is the programming related packages, and there will be one more gem kind of stuff. Yeah, gem _ package. Okay, like pip is used for installing Python packages, gem is used for installing Ruby packages. So if you want to install Ruby packages, then you can use gem underscore package. These are the different kind of variations that are already supported by Chef. Okay. So if you want to change, you can change to any one of this, or you can be specific about it also. Okay. So now, what is the syntax? How do I write these things? Okay. So first thing which you always needs to look at is action. Okay. Let me come with action. You are seeing action over here, right? Action is a symbol. Okay. Symbol is nothing but a string as on today. Tomorrow I'll slightly change its definition. As of now, symbol is a string, but we don't write it in double quotes. We would put it with 1 colon extra. Let me come to this. Okay. So whenever you are seeing an action, okay, using all of the default options, and the default option is what? Install. Okay. So what do I mean by this? So for example, yesterday we have written some of the cookbooks over here, right? Yeah. Tomcat is something which we were writing. We have updated it, Tomcat. It's okay. If we have not added, we will add it again. It will not cause much of a stuff, right? So for example, I am writing this, right? Package Tomcat do action install. Okay. So even if I write, okay, let us assume that I want to install wget. So what is the yum install wget is the command. So what is it? Wget. Writing this, all of this, or writing this is seen. Because what is the default action? If it doesn't cease action in package, it will try to do install. So you writing just package wget or package wget action install basically means the same. But we would try to be explicit about it because we want our code to be readable. But మీరు రాయకపోయినా అది ఇన్స్టలేషన్ చేస్తుంది. But if you want to uninstall, then you might need to change the values. But for installation, there is no need for you to tell an action for package because the default action is okay. So every resource will have some default action. Okay. So if you don't mention it, that would happen. Okay. So just don't be with an assumption that I have to mandatorily write an action. We mandatorily write it just to improve readability. Now what do you think it will install? It will install git. Because it is not the thing which you are seeing on the top which is important. It is important with the respect to the property called as package underscore name. If you have not mentioned package underscore name, whatever you have mentioned over here will be applied to package underscore name. But if you are specific about it, then probably whatever is there over is just a name of the resource. Okay. So every resource will have what? A name. And name will be applied to some parameter of your Chef resource. Okay. So if I write something like this, wget package name git, it means that we are trying to install git and our resources name which we are going to call is wget. Okay. Now if I write this, it will install. So basically what it is trying to tell us, whenever you write package wget and don't set this value, this is automatically what happens. It will try to set whatever is in the name to a property called as package underscore name, and this package underscore name is used for installing software. It is not what is there on the top. Okay. By default, what is there on the top will be assigned to package underscore name if you have not explicit about it. Meer rayakapote. Okay. If you don't write this property, okay, if you don't write this, hash is the comment. If you don't write this, it is as good as writing package name and telling wget because it automatically sets that value. That's one thing. Okay. So every resource will have these kind of aspects. So it is very important for us to understand them. Okay. Commonly used resources, I would be going through the classes that would cover most of your scenarios. But sometimes whenever you want to do things differently, it will not happen daily, but sometimes if you want to, then the only rescue for you is going through this documentation. Okay. Commonly used actions కి ఇబ్బంది ఉండదు. నేను క్లాస్లో చెప్పినయో లేదంటే మన ప్రాక్టీస్లో చేసినవి సరిపోతాయి. But whenever you want to deal with something which is corner kind of a scenario, then this knowledge helps. Then the only rescue is go to the documentation, try to read every parameter and understand what it does. Okay, fine. So let me go to the other stuff which we have used yesterday. What was it? Service, right? Service also will have similar things. It will have default action. Okay, it will have some property which will be set. Okay, you are seeing service name. If I write service HTTPD and service name as something different, it is speaking about a different service, exactly same as what a package is. Okay, and once you come down, you would have action, and action will have a default value. Okay, so if you see, these are the different actions, and if you basically try to see, there is something called as disable, there is something called as enable, nothing, reload, and the default value is nothing. So if you just write service, it will not do anything. Okay, but in the case of package, the default value was install. It was not nothing. Okay, so if you write service and expect it to start the service, it will not. It is not going to happen. You have to be explicit about it. So that's how you have to make distinction between what is the resource which you are using and what are the different values which we have. Fine. Okay. Now what we do is let us work on some other resources, but not like this. But let us take a scenario and then try to work out. That suits well. Okay. So what is it I want to do is I want to have a new cookbook. Okay, I want to have a new cookbook which basically installs. What is that we would install? Pardon me? Nginx. Our AT port is occupied. Probably we might need to add or disable, uninstall that machine. Okay, let us do one thing. Let us uninstall Apache and install Nginx. Make sense? Okay. Let us uninstall Apache and install Nginx. Okay. So for that, what is it I need to look into is I need to get into my first AWS machine and see what is the state, and then I need to look into my node. I have only one node as of now, but don't worry, we will be trying with multiple nodes. It is no different. Okay. Okay. We have a Red Hat node running, right? So let us try to apply on this. On this, what is the action which I want to do? I want to uninstall Apache server. Okay. Uninstall Tomcat. Let me add one more step. Uninstall Tomcat, uninstall Apache server. And this should happen only when your machine has Apache server, it should try to uninstall. Okay. And then it should install Nginx. Okay. So what is the next step? Uninstalling Apache, uninstalling Tomcat. Okay. And then basically install Nginx on. I need to know the steps, right? Okay. Manual steps are always essential. Okay. So what it says? Okay. So it says that you need to basically option A, Nginx source installation. Basically, he's asking us to do all of the steps. I am not going to do that. I want to take a easier route. Option B, install via M repository. This makes sense to us. Okay. So, but here we have to edit some file. Okay. Or basically create some file. Okay. And then I need to execute RPM command. Okay. And then I can install Nginx with this. Okay. So this is what I need to do. Fine. Okay. So first let us try to uninstall the stuff and let us try to write a code which uninstalls Apache and Tomcat from the node if it is present. So for that, what is it I need? I need a new cookbook. Okay. Okay. I'm writing make dir Nginx. Okay. Fine. And what is the stuff which creates cookbook for me? Chef generate Okay. I was practicing Ethereum yesterday, so that's the reason I had to create a folder and execute some other command. I'm in that flow. Yeah. So okay, chef generate cookbook, and let us call it as. Today we will do two things. We will not only work on default.rb, let us create on some other files also. First thing, okay. And in default.rb, I'm not going to write anything. In default.rb, I'm not going to write anything. Okay. So cd nginx. Fine. So I have recipes. I have default.rb. Okay. And let me open my terminal here itself. Okay, because that is the easier way of working it out, right? So I'd be doing Control Shift and P, Control Shift and P. Okay, for the people, you can make a note of it. Control plus Shift plus P. Okay, whenever you press this, you would get this, and on that, just say focus terminal, and you would get the terminal. Okay, if you want, you can set the terminal also. For example, Control Shift P and type terminal. Okay, create new integrated terminal. Okay, and if you basically want to execute any terminal commands, all of them will be here. Okay, and you are seeing something called a select default shell, right? You can select this and say that I don't want PowerShell, I want Git bash. I don't want PowerShell or Git bash, I want Windows command prompt. You can do anything, but PowerShell makes sense for chef. So for the complete chef's journey, I'd be using PowerShell. Probably sometime down the line, I might be using Git bash. Okay, so I am not going to write anything in default.rb. Okay, now I want to create a recipe. Creating recipe is very simple, right? Just create one more RB file, but I am not going to do that. I am going to use the same chef generate command to generate recipe for me. So sorry, chef generate recipe. Okay, I'm not written anything. Okay, I want it to give some error or some information about this command. Okay, so what is the command syntax? Chef generate recipe and path to your cookbook and then name of your recipe. Okay, and in that you can basically execute all of the other details. Okay, so chef, let us look into this and write it. Chef generate recipe, and what is my cookbook path? I am in the current cookbook path itself, so I can give this current directory, which is dot. Okay, to tell that it is a current directory, we'll be using dot, and the name of the cookbook which I want to write is, okay, okay, I would write something called as remove Apache. This is a cookbook's name which I want to write, or recipe's name which I want to write. Okay, so remove Apache will remove the Apache. That's it. Fine. Okay. Are you seeing something created? Yes. It would give the basic stuff. If you have written your own file, you have to write all of that copyright information and everything on your own. But this gives you a basic templated version. Okay. Now, first is I need to stop the service. It makes sense to stop the service before uninstalling. So I am running it on a Red Hat machine. So service httpd, and let us go to the service command and let us see what are the valid values. Okay, so in action, what is it I have to write? There is something called as start, stop. Okay, and okay, stop. Okay, and then I'd be writing not service, this time package, and package httpd, and let me get into the package. Okay, okay, okay. We have remove a package, purge a package. This action completely removes the configuration files as well as the package. Okay, and then there is something called as reconfigure, remove the package, and all of that. Okay, so what do you think makes sense for us? Okay, so for example, Debian platforms only. For other platforms, you have to use remove action. In Debian, you can also use purge. But whatever what is the platform which you are trying to use now? Red Hat. So it doesn't make sense to use purge. So what we have to use is remove. So action. Okay. Similarly for Tomcat, what is it I have to write? Service Tomcat 7 action stop, or service Tomcat action stop, and then package httpd action remove, or package Tomcat action remove. So it is very easy to uninstall the stuff. Okay, so our first step is done, and the next thing what I want to do is I want to install Nginx. So chef generate recipe, and generate the recipe in the current cookbook folder. Okay, and the name of the recipe is going to be Nginx. Okay, so let us go over here. Are we seeing something called as Nginx? Yes. Okay, so I know it will fail, but I would write package Nginx and all of that. Let it fail. Let us try to write that configuration details later. So package. Okay, so this is our recipe. Okay, so our cookbook has how many recipes now? 3. So but I want to, what is it I want to upload? I want to execute them in the order of remove Apache and then Nginx, right? First I want to remove Apache, and then I want to, so in the run list I need to write knife node add run list, and then basically add first remove Apache, and then basically go with Nginx installation. Okay, but this is what, this is an assumption from your side. Since you have written this cookbook, your assumption is you are the user of your cookbook. By default should remove Apache and then he should install. So do you think that by looking at your code, your user will understand that he has to do that? Okay, this is something which you should do, right? You should tell to your user that, okay, whatever are assumptions, I would give you a way, but if you want to do something differently, you can do whatever you want. For example, one user might come and tell that I don't want to uninstall Apache because Apache is never installed on my servers. I want to just use the install module. Wonderful. Okay, then just use a cookbook called as nginx.rb. But there might be some servers where Apache is installed, they want to remove Apache and they want to install. So that is what your intention of your cookbook is, right? So whatever is the basic intention of your cookbook, you would try to express it in default.rb. Default.rb లో మనం ఏం రాస్తామంటే మన default assumptions, so that whoever user tries to call default, it will automatically do what is your assumption. Okay, so what I do is in default.rb I'd be writing some code which calls these two things in order, and whoever user wants to use my cookbook by for its default behavior can call default.rb. For specific behavior you can call specific cookbooks. Am I clear with my statement? Okay, while writing your cookbook you might have made an assumption. All of that assumption must be basically expressed out in your default.rb. But if I am a user of your cookbook and I want to do only specifics, Okay, then I would be worrying about specifics. Don't ensure that your user will understand everything about a cookbook. Try to give default behavior in default.rb. So in default.rb, I have to first call what? Remove Apache, right? Make sense? So to do that, I'd be using include underscore recipe. Okay, and then I have to write a specific syntax for this. And the syntax for any recipe is cookbook name, 2 colons, and then recipe name. What is our cookbook's name? Nginx. Colon colon remove Apache. There is no need of RB. And then include underscore recipe Nginx colon colon Nginx. So what is the benefit out of this? Your user is least bothered now. He would be just calling default.rb to his run list. మనం node కి default.rb యాడ్ చేస్తాం. అది ఏం చేస్తుంది? That adds these two intermediately. If you have not done this step, you have to add 2 files to the run list. Antena? If you have not done this step to the run list, you need to add something like knife node add run list nginx colon colon remove Apache, and then you have to execute the same step again, knife node add run list add and the name of the node, and then nginx colon colon nginx. Does it make sense to write everything about your cookbook? Because you might be running many cookbooks in your server. So try to give a default behavior. This is my default behavior. Okay, fine. Now what I will do is, let me go into manage.chef.io. Okay. We have this, right? I'll be doing one thing as of now from UI, but very soon we would be learning how to do it from CLI. Okay. I would be editing the run list. Okay. Fine. So what is my current run list? It should be empty. Okay. So my server has nothing to work now, and I would be adding only this cookbook. Okay. Fine. Does resolve the dependencies. So it depends on what is your end command which you're trying to use. Okay. Fine. Now I need to upload this cookbook. So what would be my steps? What is the first step? Books install. Okay, and then books upload. Now to the run list, what is it I need to add? Just default.rb, because my intention is already mentioned in default.rb, and default.rb will include the other stuffs. So including my cookbook is very simple. So what has happened? So there is some error. Basically what it says, books upload, task was terminated. Strange. It should not. Let's try this again. What is metadata.rb? Let me see if I have something with that name already. I don't have anything, right? Yes. Let me try to execute the same command again. Works. So what is it saying? It has uploaded. There is some error message which it is coming, but let us ignore it. Okay. It is saying uploaded, right? Yeah. Fine. So basically, let us just look into the content, and our content should have 3 recipe files now. Are we seeing all the 3? And in default.rb, whatever we have written will apply. Yeah. So now I want to add this Nginx to the cookbook, to the run list. So for that, what is the command? Knife node run underscore list add, and then name of the node, whatever you have saved. In our case, we have given the name of the node as the public. Okay. And what is it? You have to tell recipe of Nginx. Okay. But if it was some other cookbook, for example, if I had to add remove Apache, then recipe of Nginx : remove Apache, because if you write like this, what is that you are trying to call? You are trying to call default.rb recipe. Okay, it says that it has done it. Okay. Now what is our next step? We would log in into EC2 machine, click on connect. Okay. Log in into EC2 machine. Okay. And then I would become a root user first. And then let us see this service HTTPD. It is running, right? Okay. Okay. And then I would be executing a command which is called as chef client. But in reality, will I be doing this? I will wait for convergence. In real time, I'll wait for the convergence to happen. ఎందుకంటే convergence every half an hour ko, 10 minutes ko, 1 minute ko configure అయి ఉంటుంది. Because convergence will be configured on your servers. Here I'm doing it to save time. Okay. So let us see first whether we are getting our cookbooks. Yeah. So it has stopped the service. It has removed HTTPD. Okay. And then it has failed. And for the failing, what is the reason? Because yum install Nginx is not going to work directly. There is some other work which we have to do before doing this. So this failure is a known reason. Yeah, we need to add repositories and all of that. Okay. So yesterday someone was asking how the failure will look like. So this is how it would look like. Fine. Next thing is we need to come about each and every step of that. Okay. But till here, are we clear? Now let us execute that commands. Service HTTPD status. It doesn't know anything. It was just saying it was running. It has done its job. It has failed at installing Nginx, and we know that reason before we were writing the script itself. Right? Okay. Now let us try to correct it. Now, how do I install it? There are steps, right? First thing is, what is that you need to do? You need to create a file in this folder which has this content. You need to create a file in this folder which has this content. Okay. So how do I create that file? Okay. So for that, to creating a file, I would be looking at equivalent resource, and after that I have to write a content like this. And for this content, how do I write it? So I'd be looking out how can I use file to write content. Okay. And then I'd come down. Okay. So for example, in RHEL 7 is what would be managing, so would be using this basically. Okay, and then I need to execute this RPM command also, right? So for all of this, we need to find equivalent actions, equivalent resources. Okay, so let us start. Okay, so for working on files, okay, chef will have a resource which is called as file. Till the file opens, let me look at the questions. Oh man, fan gutted. Yeah, let us see the pattern. If Chinna is asking tomorrow also at 8 o'clock. Yesterday also has asked around the same time. Okay, fine. In file, I have a property called as content where I can write what it is. Okay, and I have different modes, and obviously I would have action. And if you go into the action, the default action is create, so it would create the file. Okay, now I want to write this stuff. Okay, so how will I write this? So before Nginx, what is that I need to write? I need to configure for Nginx, right? So I can write everything in this stuff itself. Before I do this, okay, always a better step is whenever you are writing this, installation is carried out from whatever URL which we are referring for document installation of it. So that tomorrow if someone else is looking at it, you would understand what you have automated. Generally try to write this whenever you try to take the content. Okay. And first step what I have to do is I have to use a file and I have to create a file. And what is the place where I need to create a file? I need to create a file at etc m.repos.d and nginx.repo. Okay. So this is my file path where I have to create a file, and this is going to be my content, whatever it is. That is going to be my content. So I'll be writing a resource called as file. And what is my path to the file? My path to the file is this. Okay. Linux కొత్తగా మొదలు పెట్టినోళ్ళు డైరెక్ట్ షెఫ్ నుండి ఎగ్జిక్యూట్ చేయకండి, ఒకసారి మాన్యువల్ ట్రై టు ఎగ్జిక్యూట్ ఇట్ manually before you do all of this. Okay, try to install Nginx manually on a Red Hat server and then try to write chef. Okay, don't directly do this whatever I'm trying to do. Okay, so and content. Okay, so our content is multi-line. Okay, our content is multi-line, but the problem is this is how it looks like. Okay, let us try to do it. Let it fail, it's okay. Let us not worry about failure or passes. Okay, and now there is no need for me to tell owner, there is no need for me to tell group, and there is no need for me to tell action. I just put an action as create. So my first step is done. Yes. Okay, and let us try to execute this step, only this step, and then see what happens. Okay, but unfortunately for today also, for every smaller change I will be changing the version, because Burks will not accept if you are uploading the same version again and again. Okay, it is not a right practice to do debugging by uploading versions, but it's okay. Let us try to know the right practice after feeling the pain. Okay, so Burks upload. Okay, we will execute the script and then we would look into that file whether that file is containing the content like what we want or is it changing a bit. Okay, uploaded. Yes. Okay, now let me get into this machine and then execute chef hyphen client, because there is no need for me to change the run list, right? Because it is already included in the default. I have not created a new file. If I create a new file, then probably I need to put it in default at RB now. Okay, so chef client. Okay, it says that it has created a file with that content. Okay, anyway this is going to fail. there is one more step, right? We have to execute RPM minus something. Okay. So let me stop it intentionally. I have done Control C to stop it intentionally. Come on. Okay. So let us get into that file. What was the file's path? Oh, yeah, /etc. M. Let me copy it at one shot, guys. Okay. Is it what we expected? Yes. Okay. Fine. Next. What is the next step after this? I have to execute a command like RPM minus UVH and whatever this command is. Okay. So to do this, let me go into the chef resources and let me search for something called as RPM. There is something called as RPM package. Okay. RPM package. RPM package allows us to manage the RPM manager platform. Okay. And then name of the package. Okay. But are we trying to do this? Are we trying to do this? No. We are trying to execute some command of RPM UVH with some URL in it. But here are we seeing any URL? Okay. Let us scroll down. Let us see if there is some example where he tries to give. Okay. So if you can just give name of the package and then it would install it. That's how it works. But our stuff is not this. Our stuff is a very raw Linux statement. Very raw Linux statement. How do I do that? Okay. So for that, whenever there is no resource which you have found, okay, there are many things which you can use, and out of it, there is something called as execute. Okay. There is something called as execute. Okay. Execute is executing raw Linux statements. But remember, this is not idempotent. This is not idempotent. అంటే ఇది ప్రతిసారి చెయ్యాలా లేదా అన్న చెక్ దానికి తెలియదు. It will execute every time. Okay. So this might create some trouble. So whenever you are using execute, it is not idempotent. Okay. We'll work out how to make it idempotent. But for now, what is the assumption? It is not idempotent. Okay. So but I can still use it, right, for solving this problem now at least. So after file, then execute. Okay. Let me go to the documentation of it. Okay. Fine. Prepare yum or something, some name. Prepare yum. Okay. And do this. Okay. No, not this. The command is completely this, right? Copy this. Okay. And then after this, if I do yum install nginx -y, it works. What if you read the documentation correctly? First is you can add this, okay, or you can do second step. First or second step. It is not first and second. The documentation is not. If you read it, it is understand. What he has written as 1, 2, and 3. It is 1 or 2 and 3. Okay, 1 or 2 and 3. Okay, but let us assume that we have to do this in any case. Okay, But whenever you are executing raw Linux commands, what is the big assumption? These are not idempotent. And who is responsible for idempotency? We are. Okay. We are responsible for idempotency of this. Okay. Whenever you are writing these kind of raw Linux statements, దీనికి idempotency. What is idempotency? Execute it one time or thousands of times, it should give you the same result. That becomes your responsibility. Okay. That's why we would avoid as much as possible the Linux commands directly, raw Linux statements. And if you are writing raw Linux statements directly, then you have to ensure idempotency. Okay. Chef will not guarantee that. Or it is not only Chef. If you are using raw Linux statements, no configuration management tool guarantees idempotency. Okay. So let me do this. Okay. So what I would do is, I have this, right? I would comment out this because it is 1 or 2. And let me execute one important step, which is execute, okay, update, and my command is going to be update -y. Because sometimes if it asks for yes or no, okay, you have done update and it asks for y. Do you want me to execute? Enter y or no. In that cases, your chef will stop executing abruptly and it would say that I can't execute. Okay. Whenever you are automating anything, remember it should not ask for user prompts. And do you want to continue? Yes or no? Okay. Are you sure you want to download all of these packages? Yes or no? You should not have any of those user prompts. So that's why it will not ask every time, but let me make an assumption that even if it asks, it will give the value of y over here. Okay. Now shall we apply this? Shall we try to do this? Okay. Now, what is that I need to do now? I need to go to metadata.rb. Unfortunately, I have to change one more version because I have done the change, right? Yeah. And then I have to do books upload. We would be going away from that model. Don't worry about it. Okay. We would be testing on our machine and then we would be trying to upload the stable versions. Okay. Uploaded. And now let us go to this machine and then execute chef client. You can enable logging. I have not enabled. I've gone with very minimal amount of logging. But you enable, if you enable the verbose kind of logging, it will show you what is the Linux command that is executing, what are the logs and all of that. Update takes a lot of time, guys. Especially on if you do it, it will take approximately more time. But you are getting an essence of it, right? So slowly we will increase our knowledge of resources. We would identify what makes it idempotent and what doesn't make it idempotent. And if it doesn't make it idempotent, how do I ensure idempotency? Okay. So for that, we would be very soon learning something called as if and only if guards. Okay. If and only if. Okay. Where we would define a conditional statement around our own manual steps so that we ensure idempotency. Okay. There are some more problems in the script, whatever I'm writing. Okay. So tomorrow, let us assume that Red Hat 8 comes into play. What happens? Red Hat 8 comes. Okay. Let us look at my script. Okay. Will this work? No. Why? Because I have hard coded content. Okay. I want to make this work on Ubuntu also. Will this work? No, I have written the code specifically for Red Hat. Okay. So how can I basically make my code work on multiple platforms, avoiding hard coding? This is going to be our next step. Whatever we have written right now, we'll be using that. But I want to avoid hard coding. I don't want to write all of this content in this file. I would probably defining whatever is there in this, whatever we are trying to hard code in some other file, because we can change that whenever we want to change the values. Okay. If Red Hat 8 was the, probably what is that the changes in base URL, you would be seeing RHEL/8, right? So these kind of changes I want to do it in other files, not in the code files. So we would be moving away all of the hard coding to some other files altogether. Yeah. So let us see what is happening over here. Installed? Yes. Okay. And now, but we have not done one thing. In Red Hat, whenever you start anything, it becomes our responsibility to add services, right? Handling it as a service. But he says that it would be accessible. Let us try it out. Okay. So this time I should be, if it is running, what is that I should get? Not getting it. Okay. So let me do this. Service Nginx. Okay. If I do the service Nginx, and after that, okay. And now if I try to refresh this page, okay. So I have missed the service part. So quickly I'll go over there, and then I'll be writing something called as service Nginx action start. Done. So we have uninstalled Apache and we have installed Nginx. So what is that I have been doing? I have been looking at a manual steps and I have been converting them into equivalent resources. Okay. This just comes by practice. There is no other shortcut for that. The only thing which you can make is you can make a table of a small table in Excel where it says that if it is apt, use package. If it is yum, use package. That you can make out as a ground up work for your understanding. But the only way you can do all of this is just by practice. There is no other shortcut for this. Okay. So once you practice it, you would come to know that what is the resource which I have to pick. Okay. So we have looked into what are the resources. What are the resources which we know right now? Execute. And execute is idempotent, right? Yeah. Please do remember, whenever you are using execute command, idempotency is not chef's guarantee. It is our guarantee. Okay. It might be idempotent or it might not be idempotent. It depends on what you have written. Okay. And then the next step is package, service, okay, file. Okay. And also I want you to try out one more thing. I want you to create a user called as Nginx and add him to the group. Make sense? So that is, we generally would have add user, okay, or user add, and then group add, and then sync these two things, right? For that, there are chef resources called as user. Just look into that user, and from there go to the group and try to create a user called as Nginx and group called as Nginx, okay? And just tell me how it works out.